For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. Exactly a year ago to date, the India and China disengagement process in Ladakh was announced in both countries. While Defense Minister Rajnath Singh spoke in the Indian Parliament, the Chinese issued a statement that the two countries had reached an agreement to start the disengagement process. What has happened in this past 1 year after that is the topic of this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So as I said, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh announced the disengagement on February 11, 2021. During the course of his statement, one sentence stood out, and that was, and I quote here, he says, "I want to assure this House that in these talks we have conceded nothing." Now, this was important because the negotiations were difficult, they were prolonged, and they were based on the fact that both armies had fought and lost men in the Galwan clash on 15th of June. So the suspicions on both sides, and especially on the Indian side, remained very high. Despite that, by the 8th and the 9th round, the Chinese had started sending fillers to the then 14 Corps Commander Lieutenant General PGK Menon that they are willing to concede what India was demanding. India's main demand was to vacate the area between finger 3 and finger 8, or finger 5 and finger 8 really, because finger 3 is in India's control, but finger 5 and finger 8. And India wanted the Chinese troops to go back to their positions east of the finger 8 to the Sirija post that the Chinese continued to control. The Chinese had, in turn, a different demand. They wanted the Chushul Heights, the Kailash range of hills, which India had surprised the Chinese troops by occupying with tanks and armored personnel carriers on the night of August 29 and 30 of 2020. The Chinese wanted those to be vacated. At that place, at about 18 or 19,000 feet, armor element, that is tanks from both sides, were facing each other just 50 meters apart. It was a very volatile situation which needed to be diffused, and India was willing to diffuse the situation if the Chinese wanted it, only if they considered India's main demand of vacating the area between finger 5 and finger 8. That's how it began. In the 7th round, the Chinese actually tried to bargain very hard and said, we want to patrol the area between finger 5 and finger 8 at least once a month. But India said, nothing doing. You either go completely to the east of finger 8 and then declare that area as no patrol zone. Only then we will talk about the Chushul Heights and the dominant position that India had taken on the Kailash range around the Chushul area. So by the 8th and the 9th round, the Chinese started agreeing, and they said, okay, then this no patrol zone will have to be enforced. It suited India to accept that demand because in any case, India would go to finger 8 only once in a while, maybe once a month or twice a month, because India had no road to go to finger 8 from finger 3. It had to send foot patrols from finger 3 because there was no clear road to go to finger 5 and further east. So that suited India. The Chinese agreed to go back to Sirijap, and of course then India conceded the vacation of the Chushul Heights. There have been many doubts that have been raised that did India make a mistake in giving away a bargaining chip in vacating the Chushul Heights? The Northern Army commander and the Northern Army decided that there was enough ISR elements in place, that is reconnaissance, surveillance and intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance in that order, in place, which could give early warning if the Chinese tried to come and occupy the Chushul Heights like India had done in August 2020. So there was nothing to fear about that. What came out of these negotiations was that India needed to be, or Indian negotiators needed to be patient. They needed to be thorough on facts, and they needed long endurance in sitting for these talks. Remember, these talks sometimes, or the rounds of talks went on for 13, 14 hours, mainly because, of course, there's interpretation to be done because of the language problem, and also because every inch was contested, every point was debated, discussed, and finally the document was arrived on, a common document, common text was arrived at. This is the other important point to be noted, that for the first time in decades, on the border, not between the MEA Mandarins and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China, but on the border, military officers came up with a document, a written document that agreed on the disengagement process and the sequence of events, how the tanks will go down, how landforms will be restored, where the Chinese had built temporary accommodation, they had built gun positions, they had dug up places. All that was written down in a document signed by both sides, and only then the disengagement process began. That's when, after about 6 days of that disengagement process going through, we interviewed on StratNews Global the then Northern Army Commander, Lieutenant General Y.K. Joshi, in Leh, where he actually spoke about how India has gained from the negotiations and gained an upper hand against the Chinese. Since then, there have been 4 more rounds of talks, or 5 more rounds of talks in the past 1 year. They have been more difficult. Some disengagement has taken place in Hot Springs and the Gogra area, now Depsang, Demchok, and the PP, or Petrol Point 17 Alpha, remains to be vacated. Galwan was already disengaged. The deployment in Galwan was already had gone back from their respective positions. And the other issue that happened was that both sides realized how much close they had come to starting a conflict or a war. Shots were fired for the first time in 2020 when Indian forces went and surprised the Chinese on top of the north bank of Pangong Tso. India has now improved its infrastructure, deployed its forces in full strength. Rebalance of forces has taken place, as reported by us in the previous editions, where there used to be one division, 3 infantry division used to look after the Eastern Ladakh area under the 14 Corps. Today you have 2 divisions looking at the entire security of Eastern Ladakh. 3 division looks after areas north of the Pangong Tso, and Rashtriya Rifles sector, which is equivalent to a division, has been inducted from Jammu and Kashmir into Ladakh to look after the security of areas south of the Pangong Tso. If you look at the map, it's a very clear division. And other elements, which are reserve formations, have got a chance to acclimatize themselves, acquaint themselves with the topography. They've done their recce, they've done their acclimatization, they've seen their positions in event of a war. And the Air Force simultaneously has also tested and tried many of its assets, which were never deployed in high altitude or super high altitude areas during this standoff that started in May 2020 and is in a way continuing. So many lessons learned, many changes in the concepts and doctrines of the Indian military, of Indian Air Force and the Indian Army particularly, has taken place because of the Ladakh standoff. Where do we go from here is the question that may be asked. All that one can say is that the Chinese show no signs of backing down from their positions in Aksai Chin. Neither does India. So in a way, now the standoff is in a military stalemate, which perhaps suits the Chinese at the moment, but there's no difficulty for India, as shown by Indian troops, Indian logistics system, chain, which worked very efficiently, which sort of mobilized troops in large numbers in a very short time, which surprising the Chinese. And therefore, now we are at a stage where new modus vivendi or a new approach to border management will have to be found. New points of agreement will have to be found once these disengagement at these remaining friction points takes place. So all the other agreements before this, starting from 1993's Peace and Tranquility Agreement, 1996, right up to 2013, which were designed to manage the border or sort of keep the lid on any violence or keep anything from escalating further, have been thrown out of the window. And India is now pressing for new arrangements once the process is completed in the current situation. Overall, there is also a change in India's approach to the relationship with China. India has also sort of pushed back against China on many other factors, economic, technology-wise, and not conceding much of the ground when it comes to cooperating with the Chinese. The tactical battle that the Chinese wanted to fight in May 2020 has resulted in a strategic, I would say, setback for the Chinese leadership, because they didn't expect such a swift reaction from India or such a resolute attitude of the Indian armed forces, which they thought would not be equal to the task when asked to perform that task. As I said, many of these points that were coming up during the negotiations, the areas like Gurung Hill, Magar Hill, Mukpari, Rizangla, Rechinla, were all occupied by the Indian forces precisely to give Chinese the shock. They never expected this to happen. Even in the 1962 war, when the Rizangla battle took place, neither side had occupied these heights, which are forbidding. They are difficult to maintain troops on because they are beyond 18,000, 19,000 feet. Wind chill factor takes the temperature there down to minus 30, 35. And there is no way that people can live there at those heights without getting affected, their health getting affected and their mental peace getting affected. But India showed the Chinese that they could do it. And therefore, there will be many second thoughts, or at least second thoughts given by the Chinese to try and surprise India there. Beyond that, the point that India has been making is that if you want to settle the boundary or if you want to start the process again, China must clarify the LAC, which I don't think this year in 2022 China is going to do, because the crucial National Party meeting, the Communist Party of China's National Congress, or the important meeting is coming up where President Xi Jinping will be re-elected for an unprecedented third term in October, November this year. He doesn't want any disturbance to happen. In fact, that is one point up to which India will have to be patient. If any breakthrough has to come, it will come after the month of October 2022, is what the understanding is in the Indian establishment. And therefore, we'll have to wait and watch how this goes. Rebalance, I've spoken about. I've spoken about the new focus on the China border in terms of infrastructure, bridges, roads, tunnels that have been built, which would have taken about 5-6 years if you started in 2020, implementing those plans in 2020. But because of the Chinese provocative actions, most of this work has been completed in 2 years. So in a way, again, China has lost, because it has now forced India to take action, which it would have taken leisurely, or implemented these plans leisurely. So overall, how do you see the situation if one is asked? I would say that there is a military stalemate, but India has to up its game in terms of technology, in terms of surveillance, in terms of reconnaissance, intelligence, and make sure that the troops get the latest gadgets, latest equipment, and even UAVs and drones get deployed on this border, because Chinese want to win the war, win the conflict without fighting, by employing cyber warfare, by employing standoff weapons or indulging in non-kinetic, non-contact warfare. India's strength is in its soldiers. India may not be as savvy in terms of technology, but again, that has changed in these 2 years. As if you would have seen an interview I did with the Army Training Command, Army Commander Lieutenant General Raj Shukla on our sister channel as well as on StratNews Global, you would know how much work has gone into changing the mindset of the Indian Army, especially from the 20th century Army or the 19th century mindset to the 21st century needs of modern warfare. That's what the Chinese have actually forced the Indian military to do. So as they say, as the Indian Army chief had said to me in one of the interviews, why let a good crisis go waste? And this is the way the Indian military has responded. Indian establishment, Indian decision makers have responded. I wanted to flag this 1 year after the disengagement process began. And that's why this particular edition of Simply Nitin. Do keep watching StratNews Global and, of course, Simply Nitin every Saturday. You know where to reach us. Your comments are valuable. Your feedback is extremely important for us. And, of course, if you keep subscribing, ask your friends, family, colleagues to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also visit our website. And, of course, all our social media handles, if you follow them, we will get the required encouragement from all of you. Until the next time, it's goodbye.